You know, for a preseason opener, this one had plenty to talk about before the ball was even snapped. The Cowboys rolled into that matchup with the Rams, but the first thing that stood out wasn't the action on the field. It was the number of familiar names who never even suited up. We're talking about a long list of starters and key contributors who were nowhere to be found on game night, and honestly, it caught me off guard. Brian Schottenheimer made the call to rest a big chunk of his guys, and while I get wanting to keep players healthy, there's another side to this. Tyler Booker, for example, is a young lineman who still needs live reps, especially with the physical style this offense says it wants to embrace. If you don't put him out there now, you're setting him up for his first real test against a defensive front like Philadelphia's, and that's not exactly easing into the season. Same goes for BB. Both of these guys could have benefited from at least a series or two. It's not like other teams were hiding their stars completely. Yamar Chase, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, they all saw the field in their preseason openers, even if it was just for a few snaps. Those moments matter. They set a tone, get the timing sharp, and let players feel the game speed before week 1 hits. But instead, Dallas kept it ultra-conservative. Sure, avoiding injuries is a priority, but you can't bubble wrap your team through an entire preseason and expect them to be fully in sync when the real thing starts. And it wasn't just the offensive side. Even defensive players like Ka Alum, who's still adjusting and learning, were kept on the sideline. When you've got a new scheme on both sides of the ball, every rep counts, and skipping those opportunities can feel like a misstep. I can already hear some fans defending the decision, saying it's smart, saying it's about the bigger picture, but let's be real. Those other teams also care about the bigger picture, and they still found a way to give their stars some work. So let me throw it to you. Do you think the Cowboys made the right call resting so many key players, or should they have at least gotten a few snaps to shake off the rust? Drop your take in the comments, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button so we can keep this conversation going all season long. We're pushing for 16,000 subscribers, and your support makes it happen. When you start breaking down the action we did see, the bad stood out pretty quickly, and it began with the offense. Joe Milton's night was exactly what you might expect from a young quarterback making his preseason debut. Flashes of potential mixed with frustrating mistakes. There were moments where you could see the arm talent clear as day, like when he rolled left and still launched it nearly 60 yards without even setting his feet. But then there were the overthrows, the hesitation in the pocket, and a lack of touch in the red zone that kept points off the board. Some of that falls on him, but honestly, he didn't get much help either. The offensive line had its own struggles, and that's putting it lightly. Austin Richards lining up incorrectly not once, but twice in a row. That's the kind of mental lapse you just can't have, even in preseason. Protection broke down too often, tackles were getting beat off the edge, and some plays could have easily been called back for holding. When you can't protect the quarterback and you can't establish the run, it's tough to find any rhythm, and the play calling didn't help. Trying to run play action without having established the run is just asking for it to fall flat. The struggles weren't only on offense. The defensive interior had its issues too, especially against the run. Both early and late in the game, Dallas was giving up chunks of yards on the ground. Mozzie Smith, Toa, and the rest of the rotation still haven't given this defense a true one-tech presence that can clog the middle. Meanwhile, the Rams, even without Sean McVay calling plays, stuck to a more balanced approach. Establish the run, get the quarterback comfortable, and build from there. The Cowboys, on the other hand, went heavy on passing early, which left Milton unsettled and the offense one-dimensional. It's preseason, so nobody's panicking, but these issues are worth noting. You want to see sharper execution, better fundamentals, and a little more physicality, especially from the guys fighting for roster spots. So I'll put it to you. Are you more concerned about Joe Milton's up and down performance, or the offensive line getting manhandled? Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't yet, tap that like button so we can keep growing Cowboys Nation here on the channel. Now, let's not make it sound like the whole night was a disaster, because there were some real bright spots that jumped off the screen. For me, it starts with Maris Liufau. From the moment he stepped onto the field, you could tell he was playing at a different speed than everyone else out there. He was flying around, making tackles, and showing instincts you usually see from a veteran, not a second-year player in a preseason opener. Honestly, I couldn't figure out why he was still in the game past the first series. When a guy looks that ready, you don't risk him for meaningless snaps. Then there's Phil Maffa, who brought exactly the kind of physicality this offense needs. Every time he got the ball, you could feel the collision when defenders tried to bring him down. At 230 pounds, he moves better than you'd expect for a back his size, and he looked like he could step into that short yardage role right away. He even had a chance on the goal line slipped on that one, but the intent was clear. He could be the hammer when you need it. Malik Davis also chipped in with some nice runs, showing he's not ready to give up his roster spot without a fight. On the defensive side, Israel Mukuamu continued his tradition of making plays in the preseason. It feels like every year he finds a way to get his hands on the ball, and this time it was an interception. That's just who he is. He might give up a play here and there, but he'll make up for it with a big one. I'd like to see him get some snaps in the nickel during the regular season because his ball skills and length are rare for that role. These are the kinds of performances you circle when you're building a 53-man roster. They're the guys forcing the coaching staff to take notice. And that's where I want to hear from you. Who impressed you the most in this game? Was it Liu Fao's speed, Mafa's bruising runs, or Mukuamu's knack for making a play? Drop your pick in the comments, and if you like seeing these guys shine, hit that like button so we know you're as fired up as we are to see them in action again. Looking ahead to preseason week 2, this is where adjustments need to come fast. The most obvious one, getting the starters at least some live action. I'm not saying throw Dak and CeeDee out there for a whole quarter, but give them a series or two to get their timing down. The same goes for the offensive line guys like Tyler Booker and BB need to face real pass rushers before the games start counting. You don't want week 1 against a tough defensive front to be the first time they've gone full speed in months. Joe Milton's approach also needs refining. He's got all the tool size, arm strength, mobility, but he has to slow the game down mentally. Preseason week 2 should be about helping him find a rhythm early, which means leaning on the run game, hitting a couple of easy completions, and letting him build confidence before asking for deep shots. Right now, it feels like Schottenheimer's trying to skip steps with him calling play action before the run is established, asking for complex reads before he's in a groove. The run game itself needs to come out with a purpose. Phil Maffa, Malik Davis, and the rest of the backfield need lanes to work with, and that means the O-line must play with more discipline and physicality. No more back-to-back mental mistakes, no more losing leverage off the snap. Establish the ground attack, force the defense to respect it, and suddenly Milton's life gets a whole lot easier. Defensively, the focus has to be on plugging the middle. Whether it's Mozzie Smith stepping up or a rotation tweak, they can't keep giving up those inside chunk runs. Fix that, and it'll make the linebackers' jobs easier and keep opposing offenses in longer third downs. This next game is the perfect chance for Brian Schottenheimer to show growth as a preseason head coach, finding the balance between keeping guys healthy and having them ready to hit the ground running in week 1. So tell me, what's the number one thing you want to see fixed in week 2? Drop your answer below and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss our next breakdown. So, when you put it all together, this preseason opener was exactly what you'd expect: some excitement, some frustration, and plenty of room to grow. The decision to rest so many starters will keep sparking debate, and maybe we won't know if it was the right call until week 1. Joe Milton gave us both a glimpse of his ceiling and a reminder of how far he still has to go. The offensive line, still a work in progress, but we also saw flashes from guys like Maris Liufau, Phil Maffa, and Israel Mukuamu, players who could be difference makers when the regular season rolls around. The key takeaway for me is that preseason isn't about wins or losses, it's about evaluation and preparation. And right now, the Cowboys have a lot to evaluate in a short time to prepare. Preseason week 2 will be big, not just for the roster battles, but for setting the tone heading into September. If they can clean up the mental mistakes, get the run game rolling, and let the starters knock off some rust, this team can hit week 1 ready to go. Alright, Cowboys Nation, it's your turn. What's the biggest storyline you're watching heading into week 2? Is it Milton's development, the O-line's improvement, or a specific roster battle? Drop your take in the comments, and if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed so you're here for every breakdown, reaction, and update all season long. We're pushing for 16,000 subscribers, and every click gets us closer.